Have you ever imagined overhearing a high-stakes scheme to overthrow a billionaire's empire while you're just serving coffee? Lena was just a waitress, used to being ignored by millionaires. But one day while serving a table, she heard something she shouldn't have. A plan to deceive and destroy a billionaire businessman. She could have stayed quiet. She could have pretended she didn't hear anything. But she decided to warn him. What she didn't know was that this choice would change her life forever. Because the next day, a luxury car appeared at her doorstep and, with it, an invitation to a game much more dangerous than she could have imagined. Cafe Bellagio was packed. That morning, the smell of freshly brewed coffee mixed with the expensive perfume of regular customers, most of them business people in high society. Lena balanced a tray with 3 cups and deftly dodged a distracted executive gesticulating. On the phone, her shift was almost over, and she couldn't wait to ditch her apron and put her feet up. She stopped next to the table where Marco and Bruno were sitting. Both were frequent customers, owners of Argos Tech, and, according to business magazines, geniuses in the technology sector. But to Lena, they were just 2 more millionaires who saw her as part of the cafe scenery. Today, however, they seemed more excited than usual. To the billions to come, Bruno toasted, raising his glass of sparkling wine. By the billions, Marco repeated, smiling before taking a sip. Lena discreetly rolled her eyes as she poured coffee into the cups. Ah, the wonderful world of the rich, she thought. She walked away but stopped when she heard Bruno answering his phone. Yes, everything is fine. The idiot has no idea. Once he signs, I get everything. Lena blinked. Her instinct told her to move on to the next table, but something in Bruno's tone made her hesitate. Yes, tomorrow he transfers everything to me, and the next day he'll be out of his own company without even understanding how. Her heart sped up. She looked at Marco, who was still smiling, completely oblivious to the betrayal he was about to suffer. She could pretend she hadn't heard anything, could ignore it and go on with her life. But something inside her stirred. Bruno got up, saying he needed to take another call outside. Marco was left alone, scrolling through his phone. Lena saw her chance and, without thinking too much, leaned slightly toward him. I know I'm just the waitress and all, but maybe you shouldn't trust your friend so much. Marco looked up, surprised. Like what? He wants to steal your company. Do you take sugar in your coffee? Marco laughed, clearly thinking it was a joke. What? Lena sighed. I heard the conversation. He plans to outwit you. He'll make you sign something tomorrow, and after that you're out of Argos. Marco frowned, looking at the door where Bruno had left. You may have misunderstood. Oh, of course, because the idiot has no idea. I get everything. Can mean a lot of good things, right? Marco was silent for a few seconds. And why would you tell me that? Lena shrugged. Because I don't like fake people. He watched her for a moment, then smirked. Well, I appreciate the concern, but maybe you misunderstood. If I were in your place, I wouldn't ignore this information. But who am I, right? Just the waitress. Marco seemed thoughtful. Before he could respond, Bruno returned to the table. What were you talking about? Lena smiled politely. We were talking about coffee. It looks like tomorrow is going to be a big day. Marco looked at her for a moment before nodding, not taking his eyes off her. Lena walked away, picking up another tray. She tried to get back to work, but she felt Marco's gaze on her for the rest of the day. Marco seemed less excited now, and watched Bruno with renewed attention. At the end of her shift, Lena headed to the employees' locker room. As she took off her apron and grabbed her bag, her co-worker Sophia looked at her curiously. What was that at Marco's table? Were you hitting on him? Lena let out a short laugh. If I wanted to get fired, I'd find a less awkward way. So what was it? She hesitated for a moment. Let's just say I heard something I shouldn't have and decided to tell him. Sophia raised an eyebrow. You're brave or reckless? Maybe a bit of both. Lena grabbed her coat and left through the cafe's back door, still feeling the adrenaline of what she had just done. The night was cold, and she hugged herself as she walked home. Would Marco believe her? Would he do something? Or had she gotten herself into much bigger trouble than she imagined? The next morning, she would discover that her life was about to change completely. Lena woke up to a loud noise coming from the street. She rubbed her eyes and went to the window, still drowsy. When she looked outside, her eyes widened. A shiny, black car, the kind she only saw in spy movies, was parked in front of her house. No, it can't be for me, she thought. The engine was running and a man in an impeccable suit got out of the driver's seat. He looked directly at Lena's door holding a white envelope. She held her breath. A scam, a subpoena, some millionaire angry because I got in where I don't belong. The doorbell rang. Lena took a deep breath and opened the door. Miss Lena? That depends. If it's a bill, I've never heard of this person, she joked. The man kept a serious expression and held out the envelope. Mr. Marco asked me to deliver this in person. Lena blinked a few times. What? The driver did not respond. He simply handed her the envelope and went back to the car. The vehicle drove away smoothly, leaving Lena standing in the doorway, holding the envelope as if it might explode. She closed the door and tore the paper open anxiously. Inside was a silver key and a short note. Thanks for the heads up. I think we need to talk. Address below. Marco. Lena stared at the message. Right. I've definitely stepped into a spy movie now. For a moment, she considered ignoring it, but her curiosity won out. The address led her to a luxury building. The doorman was already waiting and handed her an access card. Mr. Marco is waiting on the roof. Of course he is, Lena murmured, entering the elevator. The doors opened onto a gigantic apartment, the kind of place where even the air felt purer. Marco was sitting on a couch, holding a glass of whiskey. You came, he said without looking away. Look, if this is a bribe, I'll let you know I'm not that hard to buy. But I do need to know the price, Lena joked. Marco laughed and indicated the sofa. Sit down. We have a lot to talk about. Lena crossed her arms. So, want to explain why a billionaire sent me a luxury car instead of just calling? Let's say you gave me a valuable warning. She sat and faced him. Did you investigate? Marco nodded. I found things I didn't like. He picked up a tablet and slid his finger across the screen. My lawyer found suspicious contracts. Bruno has been embezzling money from the company for months. Lena let out a sigh. So he's a professional traitor, and I need your help to catch him in the act. Lena laughed humorlessly. Oh, of course. The billionaire needs the waitress. Makes sense. You're the only one who heard that conversation. And more importantly, you're the only one who told me. She thought for a moment. What exactly do you want me to do? I need you to collect information. Lena raised an eyebrow. Are you serious? Very. She crossed her arms. What if I say no? Marco smiled. You can take the key and never see me again. The apartment is yours, regardless of what you decide. Lena's eyes widened. Wait, what? It's a gift. Do you give apartments to everyone who saves your skin, or am I special? Let's just say your honesty impressed me. Lena looked at the key, still in disbelief. If I agree to help, what exactly do I have to do? Marco leaned forward. Help me take Bruno down. Together. Lena smirked. Oh, this will be fun. She turned the silver key in her fingers, still trying to process everything. Just so I understand, you want me to infiltrate your company and spy on your cheating partner, and in exchange I get an apartment? Marco smiled. Basically, yes. She laughed in disbelief. My life until yesterday was serving coffee. Now suddenly I'm a corporate spy? This escalated quickly. You noticed something no one else did. I need that skill. Lena crossed her arms. And how exactly do I help? Bruno is closing a suspicious contract. He thinks I'm distracted, but if I make any wrong move, he'll get ahead of me. Lena snorted. And I'm plan B because he'd never notice me. Marco nodded. Exactly, she sighed, looking at the key. Okay, boss. Where do I start? The next morning, Lena was at the front desk of Argos Tech, holding a visitor's badge. I can't believe I accepted this, she muttered to herself. The building was a temple of glass and steel, where people seemed to move at double speed, always in a hurry. She headed to the company's in-house cafe where Bruno usually had his daily espresso. Lena. She turned and saw a man in a suit, with sharp eyes and a discreet scar on his eyebrow. "You must be Raoul," she said, recognizing the investigator hired by Marco. "And you're the waitress turned secret agent?" "I prefer elite security consultant," Lena replied. Raoul smiled. "Here's the device. Put this in the boardroom." He handed her a small recorder. Lena swallowed. "Okay. Nothing major. Just planting a listening device in a billionaire's company. Totally normal." At lunchtime, Bruno entered the meeting room, talking loudly on the phone. Lena pretended to clean the coffee table and quickly slid the device under the main chair. "This contract needs to be closed today," Bruno said, unaware of her presence. "If Marco suspects something, everything could fall apart." She gritted her teeth. The guy was really brazen. When Bruno left, she took out her phone and messaged Marco. "Lena, Bruno is nervous. He said he needs to close everything today. Does that tell you anything?" "Marco, it means we're running out of time." That night, Lena met Marco and Raoul at the apartment. "The recorder picked this up," Raoul said, playing an audio file. Bruno's voice echoed through the room. "Marco has no idea. When he signs, I'll take over everything." Lena crossed her arms. "I have to ask, do billionaires always blindly trust their best friends?" Marco sighed. "Apparently it's a common mistake," Raoul smiled. "Good news is we've got him. Now we just need him to bury himself further." Lena raised an eyebrow. "And how do we do that?" Marco leaned forward. "Tomorrow Bruno will try to make me sign this contract. But this time the contract will be a trap." Lena smiled. "I love a good plot twist." Marco's office was too quiet for such an important day. Lena watched from the side of the room as he reviewed the documents spread out on the table. "Are you sure this will work?" she asked. Marco looked at her with a half smile. "If Bruno is as greedy as I imagine, he'll fall right into it." "Lena, it would be excellent because I definitely don't want to play amateur detective for nothing." Marco closed the folder and stood up. "Are you ready?" "Well, I've survived this far without being fired or murdered, so I guess so." The Argos Tech meeting room was immaculate, with a large glass panel displaying the city in the background. Bruno arrived punctually, carrying a black briefcase and wearing the same confident smile as always. "Marco," he said, shaking his friend's hand enthusiastically, "we're finally going to close this." Marco smiled back. "Yes, finally." Lena was sitting discreetly in a corner of the room, pretending to review some papers. She watched as Bruno took out the documents and slid them across the table. "It's all here. You just need to sign on the last page." Marco picked up the pen, hesitating for a second before signing. Bruno glanced at Lena, who kept her expression neutral. "Something wrong?" he asked. "Nothing," Marco replied. "I just want to make sure I do this right." Bruno laughed. "You were always cautious, but you can trust me." "Oh, I trust you," Marco said, finishing his signature and handing the papers back. "Congratulations, partner." Bruno took the documents and smiled, satisfied. "I knew you'd make the right choice." Lena folded her arms. "What will the police think of your choice?" Bruno froze. The door to the room opened, and Raoul entered, accompanied by 2 police officers. "Bruno Costa, you are under arrest for financial fraud and embezzlement of corporate funds." Bruno turned pale. "That's a mistake." Marco held up a copy of the documents Bruno had just signed. "These contracts have been changed. What you signed doesn't give you control over Argos Tech. It confirms all the fraudulent transactions in your name." Bruno's eyes widened. "Did you set me up?" "No, you set yourself up when you tried to deceive me." The police handcuffed Bruno, who was still trying to argue. "Marco, you can't do this. I was your best friend." Marco approached him. "I really thought I could trust you, but apparently I was wrong." Bruno was taken away by the police, still protesting. Lena turned to Marco. "Wow, that was dramatic," Marco laughed. "You helped a lot." "Yes, but now comes the big question. Do I finally get free coffee for life? Marco took out an envelope and handed it to her. Lena opened it and saw a contract. Wait, is this a job offer? Director of Corporate Security? She looked at him, surprised. So I went from waitress to investigator, and now I'm head of security for a billion-dollar company? You've proven you have a talent for this. Lena smiled. All right, but I still want that free coffee. Marco laughed. 2 weeks later, Lena was sitting in the office of her new position at Argos Tech, looking out at the city through a huge glass window. Her phone vibrated with a message from Marco. Marco, still regretting getting involved in this? She smiled before replying. Lena, not at all. Let us know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing content. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.